we want sport to be inclusive, but it isn't. Because when you are unable to afford it, if you're not good enough, if you don't have the resources, if you can't commit to all that practice and training and competition, well, you leave sport. And there's nothing, or there's very little to help others just play for the sake of playing. And sport and rec should be for everyone, because really it is about having fun, moving your body in a healthy way, making those social connections. And we've lost that. And that's really where I took my experience from sport at the student and university level and said, how can we do this throughout society? Because at the university level, when we focused on the people and not the sport, we were able to increase participation from 11,000 students a year to over 30,000 students a year. We put the person first. And that really changed how we invited, welcome, and included participants into sport and recreation at the university. And that's where I founded Bonobo, saying, I want to use that experience so that we can help society and our communities feel like they belong in sport and rec, regardless of what their background is, regardless of identity, gender or sexual identity, race, culture, any size, height. Is saying that we all have ability to play and move, and we should all have that right to do so. So how do we help change the system? That's the hardest part, and that's where I hope Bonobo can help. The invitation is just asking someone to show up, right? And so in an HR framework, what do? We put out a job posting. Come work for us. And we know the better job postings are the ones that say, here's why you want to work for us. We're awesome. We're going to have fun. We're purposeful. They put where some other job descriptions are, you get paid, you are paid to do this, that, and there. Please send your cover letter. I want to empower and educate and inform those organizations, the power they have in building belonging and fostering belonging and building the community. That's the mark I want to leave.
Hey everyone. Welcome to another inspiring episode of the Startup Impact Show. I am Shivi, your host for the show. And with each episode, we try to come closer to our goal to share some influential and empowering stories that will help you get out of your matrix, unlock your true potential, and share your wisdom with the world. And to do so, our today's guest on the show is the founder of Bonobo Consulting, Marc Itturiaga, who comes with 20 plus years of experience in higher education, sports, recreation, and community development. He started Bonobo Consulting just because he wanted people to feel more invited, welcomed, and included, and to foster belonging in sports, recreation, and community. So please help me in welcoming our super inspiring speaker today, Marc Itturiaga. Marc, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm delighted and blessed to be here. So thank you for the invitation.
We are really excited to have you today, Marc. And Marc, I remember our first conversation the day I spoke to you first time over the Zoom, not too long ago. And I remember I was so excited, I was so inspired that I almost jumped on the chair and I requested you to come on the show, and you were amazing to say yes to that. And what inspired me was your life journey. What inspired me was how included you were with the diversity, and your childhood, where you felt that you don't fit in, but you were still fitting in, where you had such a diverse background, you had such a different ethnicity to bring up in your life. Those things that we all look forward for, you have that in the childhood, but yet you wanted to give back to the community more. So I would love that if you could share that story with our audience today.
Sure. So as you can see, I identify and I look like I'm a straight, white, cisgendered male with a lot of the privileges that came with it. So I want to preface that first, because I've reaped the benefits of that privilege of that identity. But growing up, my father is an immigrant from Chile, still a landed immigrant, not a citizen. He met my mother, who was from Quebec, who they both didn't speak English. So one of the rare things, though, identified as white, I grew up in a household where English was a second language for both of my parents, and also was different from the language they spoke, French and English, or French and Spanish. And so growing up, I've always been surrounded by diversity. It wasn't something I chose. It wasn't, I didn't actively seek it out. But eventually my parents separated and divorced. My father married a woman from the Philippines. One of the things growing up when the Chilean immigrants came to Canada in Toronto, all my uncles that weren't necessarily relatives, but were part of the community, also, for some reason, and I'm not sure why, also connected with other Filipino women. And so I grew up with this mix of Spanish, Chilean, and Filipino culture surrounding me, but never actually being brought up in that culture. So I would be part of the foods and listen to music, but it was never ingrained in me by my father or my mother as a French Canadian about saying, like, this is our culture. I grew up in the traditional, what you would say, the white Canadian culture. The other challenge was my grandparents didn't speak any English. So growing up, and all my aunts and uncles, I had a few in Toronto, but for the most part, I didn't connect with many of my relatives because they spoke a different language. I didn't have that, even though I was there in the family. I was also the youngest, so I was always kind of the little one in the corner, and people, oh, how cute, but never really engaged. So though I was included and I was there, I never felt like I fully belonged in my family. Also growing up, I was considered gifted, which meant that I skipped a grade. So I was also always the youngest with my peers in school. So when other teenage boys were starting to do some of those more teenage things, I was still stuck in watching cartoons and playing make-believe, and I was okay with that. I was comfortable with that. And so as I grew up and was in this environment, even things like my aunt married a Muslim man from Syria. So I had a little bit components of the Muslim culture, but never really understood it, and not until much later in life when I had those opportunities. But it just seemed diversity was all around me. My father owned his own business. He had co-workers and partners that were from India and from China. And so again, it was just this rich, diverse culture all around me that I saw, but I just lived it. I didn't actually experience it in any vibrant way. But also growing up in the suburbs and around a white culture, it was always something that I saw what my friends did and what my friends' parents did. And probably the last thing was I grew up with my best friend through elementary school and high school who was Black, and his parents were from the Caribbean. And so I often would be at his family picnics and parties, and again, being different, but never really truly realizing it. I had that privilege of never feeling different, but I also never felt like I belonged. I never felt that it was, this is where I'm at. So I feel like and wonder that I built an appreciation and a curiosity about the world around me, because that's what my lived experience was. It was just surrounded by all this difference, which to me was normal. And so growing up and learning about that and reflecting on the impact it had on my journey now, with looking at belonging and how we make people feel like they can be their authentic selves without having to fit in. I really feel like that childhood experience into university was something that really brought me onto this journey.
Yeah, Mark, I feel like you have half of the world in your family, like South American, Latin, Africa, Asia, North America, like that kind of a diverse background. Is that the reason why you started Bonobo, and was that the reason, like what was the reason that you got involved into the sports and yet never felt like a coach or like a like a teacher out there, but more like a inspiration, more like guiding students on it, and yet started this Bonobo? So how did that transition happen?
Right. And, so I'll start off with saying that I've always loved working with people and developing and learning more about them. And so my career started that I thought I was going to work with youth. I thought I was going to be a teacher. And actually, I worked at a private school out of university. And that experience made me think I do not want to work in formal education at all. It was a very bad experience because it felt very systemic in the schooling. So I got working with universities and youth groups, so I had the opportunity to work in Ecuador, in a rural village, and that was my first experience of understanding the idea of the importance of language and culture and identity, because here I was, a university-educated individual working in a community to help create sustainable community development. And my host mother, who I lived with, she was about 4 feet tall. She was this tiny woman with a powerful voice and a powerful just essence in the community. And anytime I spoke to her, because I learned Spanish there. Anytime I spoke to her, she would say, "Qué lindo," which means how cute. And here I was, this grown man and this little powerful leader of a woman patting me on the head saying, "How cute," anytime I tried to speak, because the words were there or the ideas, but I was speaking like a 5-year-old. That led me to, I also worked for the International Student Center at University of Toronto as a program coordinator. And that was another kind of experience and breadth of wondering how amazing it is for these young people to come where English is a second language, where the culture is different, and they want to come not only learn, university level courses, but they want to experience the life, and the culture. And so I remember bringing them to ice skate and to, and teaching them how to wear warm clothes. But they were also involved in sharing their stories and their journeys and their culture through workshops and it was just such a wonderful experience. So I've always been a part of, like, what does that look like to develop students? That brought me into sport and rec. So I did it at university, and I love sports. I play basketball. You can see behind me, I have 2 jerseys from basketball. But I never felt like an athlete, the traditional sport. Because I'm very short. I'm 5'6", so I'm not a tall individual. I'm not that athletic. And I feel like I'm a good basketball player. I know how to, but I never played sport the same ways that you hear traditionally now about, that we're going to get our children to become these top athletes and play in the NBA and in the NHL. I just played it because I liked it. In fact, growing up with a Latino father, soccer was what was pushed, and I played soccer for a while. And at some point I just said, I don't like to do this anymore. I don't want to play. And I think I gravitated to basketball because of the idea of the 2 jerseys. These guys are famous point guards. Well, maybe one's not so famous, and a point guard is someone who facilitates the experience for the other players. They make the team go. And I think that's what I really loved about basketball in particular. They're often shorter, so I kind of identified with that. But the idea is that I don't need to score. If I can support and make my team successful, then we are successful as a team. So then I ended up working for the University of Waterloo as an intramural coordinator, organizing the sports. But again, I didn't have that story of someone saying, I had a memorable coach who really pushed me, or I have all these medals and trophies. That was not my experience. Yeah. I truly loved playing just to play, and all the social connections I made for that, where oftentimes sport and recreation is very focused on the medals and the success and the championships and the elite skill. Mm-hmm. That was my reality. So not having that background, but being in charge of a whole area of sport and recreation, I didn't take those preconceived notions of sport that we hear. And instead, I really look to, what are the students that I'm serving? What do they want to do? And that's really where the journey of belonging came, because I did things much differently. And I hired and trained and worked with a team that focused on sports and recreation and fitness a little different than what every other organization was doing. And that was really my journey to leading up to now with Bonobo, is saying that those same problems with sport and recreation, they still exist. We want sport to be inclusive, but it isn't. Because when you are unable to afford it, if you're not good enough, if you don't have the resources, if you can't commit to all that practice and training and competition, well, you leave sport. And there's nothing, or there's very little to help others just play for the sake of playing. So I think of young people, especially, our children who are 6, 7, and 8, they're just learning the sport. And we do that. But now it's becoming so important to continually practice instead of just having fun. But now it's like that as adults. Where do adults go to play and have fun? And so really that becomes exclusive, because we talk about culture-wise, identity-wise, gender and sexual identity with regards to inclusiveness, which is a problem in sport and recreation. But there's also a problem with people that don't feel like they're good enough, like they're fit enough, they don't look the part, they're not the right body type, and so they also feel excluded. And essentially where it comes in, I feel that the underlying factors, they feel like they don't belong in sport and rec. And sport and rec should be for everyone, because really it is about having fun, moving your body in a healthy way, making those social connections. And we've lost that. And that's really where I took my experience from sport at the student and university level and said, how can we do this throughout society? Because at the university level, when we focused on the people and not the sport, we were able to increase participation from 11,000 students a year to over 30,000 students a year.
Really? In how much time?
I would say in less than 5 years. And so we increased female participation, we increased, international student participation, different gender identities, because we stopped focusing on the sport and put the person. So here's a quick example of how I say, oftentimes we say, I'm going to program or provide an opportunity for basketball players. When you say it that way, you know what the general rules of basketball are. There's a culture and understanding and expectation. You ask people that have played basketball their whole life to play, and everything is set in order for that. You flip it and put the person first and say, we are programming for people playing basketball. It changes everything, because those expectations are no longer there. Maybe we're not playing five-a-side basketball with a referee and times and score. Maybe we're playing a free throw competition or playing bump or doing whatever that looks like, because we're saying, how do the people want to play basketball rather than having the basketball the forefront? And we did that with everything, whether it was basketball, soccer, a fitness class, swimming, any of those things. We put the person first. And that really changed how we invited, welcome, and included participants into sport and recreation at the university. And that's where I founded Bonobo, was saying, I want to use that experience so that we can help society and our communities feel like they belong in sport and rec, regardless of what their background is, regardless of identity, gender or sexual identity, race, culture, any size, height, is saying that we all have ability to play and move, and we should all have that right to do so. So how do we help change the system? That's the hardest part. And that's where I hope Bonobo can help.
Yeah. And oh my God, so many important points that you touched right now. Like, it's important to win, but like accolades and awards, they're not gonna replace with your human skills. They're not gonna replace you with your growing skills. And also what you just touched about, 3 important words which were really important was invitation, welcoming, and inclusion. So do you think like these 3 words is important in sports? Because it is what you said about, and also like in a day-to-day life, like even when I used to work as an HR, I used to work as a corporate trainer. And when we used to welcome any newcomers to the company, whenever we used to do induction out there, those were the 3 important aspects that we touched upon. So what do you think about the process when you talk about that these 3 words are going to help people feel included in the diversity, and everybody should have a chance to perform, everybody should have a chance to explore?
Mm-hmm. And that's why, so I call that the belonging framework. And so when we talk about equity, diversity, and inclusion, the way I like to share it sometimes is diversity is a reality. It's not something we do. It just is. Our world is diverse, not only from cultures, but we have neurodiversity, we have personality diversity, we have all of this. So that's just what happens. It's the reality. The equity and inclusion are those practices and policies, and it's often at a high level, right? We think about, there's a equity, diversity, inclusion officer at workplaces, and there's, theories and research and PhDs you can take. It's wonderful information, but I'm not sure how accessible it is to everyday practitioners and people just living their lives. So what I fell on was the term belonging, because when we have diversity, equity, inclusion, then you feel like you belong. The individual feels like they belong. And the cool thing about belonging that I like is that the individual gets to decide whether or not they feel like they belong. You can have all the equity, diversity, inclusive practices and policies and, well, we did this, but in the end, I get to say whether I feel like I belong. So like I mentioned with my family, I never felt like I belong. They could say, what? We love you, Mark. Come, you're part of this family. I go, I know I'm a part of it. I just may not feel like I belong. And that's okay, because I still love them and I can be with them. But it's the idea of belonging that I get to own. And so when we talk about the invitation, welcoming, and inclusiveness, those are the three parts of the framework that I think are critical for belonging to happen. I think it's easy for anyone to understand that. So, and it can be used anywhere, at work, in your community, within your family, right? I could use that framework, and maybe I will, to describe why I don't feel like I belong in my family necessarily. So the first, we talk about invitation, right? So if you think about sports or in a workplace or anything like that, the invitation is just asking someone to show up, right? And so in an HR framework, what do? We put out a job posting. Come work for us. And we know the better job postings are the ones that say, here's why you want to work for us. We're awesome. We're going to have fun. We're purposeful. They put where some other job descriptions are, you get paid, you are paid to do this, that, and there. Please send your cover letter. Both are invitations. One's going to be more powerful than the other. And I say the same thing with sport and rec. What's happened is that if you played sports, all the invitation needs to be is, come here, this is when we're playing, this is how much it costs, this is where to go. And you go, great, I'm all for it. But Shivi, I don't know, have you played basketball before?
No, I've not played basketball, but this is something I wanna touch base here. No disrespect to any HRs out there, because I come from the HR background too. But do you feel that HRs are so engrossed with inside policies and processes that they lose the feel of being innovative, being actually human, to welcome human in a company, that they got so engrossed with the ATS that they are not able to find the right fit, the person who does not just have a qualification, but also the zeal to work for the companies, the value to work into it?
Mm-hmm. Well, human is the first part of that word, human resources. And I think exactly, we focused on the resources part, focused on the system, on all the duties. Even when we talk about someone trying to fit into an organization, I think that's one of the problems, is that fitting in doesn't mean belonging. Fitting in means I'm going to come in and do all of the cultural, societal norms that this organization does. And oftentimes what happens is the diversity, equity, inclusion become a checklist, right? Where this idea of diversity is, oh, we have someone with dark skin, great, check, we've done our job. But that's only part of the invitation of saying, great, we want someone of a diverse background. But oftentimes what happens is it ends there. And when we talk about how someone feels welcome and included, that's where the problem happens with human resources, is because you hearing, well, no. I once talked with an individual most recently on a podcast about she was from France, and she was French, working in the UK, in the United Kingdom. And she was told by her supervisor that she was too French. What does that mean? You're too French. She is French. That's her identity. That's her experience. So to hear someone say they were invited because they got the job, but now welcome and included, you're being told you need to do something differently. You cannot be who you are because being too French. And again, I don't know what that meant, but that was the comment. And saying, you don't feel like you belong if you need to change who you are. So part of that human resources is also, how do we welcome and invite our staff and our people to not only not fit in, but to bring that diversity, that lived experience that they've had, and benefit the company because of that, because that difference is valuable. It's something that's going to help us thrive, but that's often not the case. We've talked about this earlier, Shivi, about in our previous conversation about, we often say, like, let's invite people to the table. We need to invite more diversity to the table. And the problem with that table is it was built like people like me, white, straight, privileged men. And we say, come diversity, come to this white privileged man table, but shh, quiet, listen and learn and listen to the culture so you too can try to be like white privileged men. That is insane. And it's why we have all these problems, because they're not really welcomed and included to be their authentic selves and to bring what they're bringing to the table. So that table needs to be crashed and burned and broken and smashed. And what we need to do is start rebuilding that table with the voices and the identities of who it represents. And that's kind of the problem with sport and recreation right now that I see, is that we'll talk about gender equity and we'll talk about more inclusion and diversity, but this system is still that sports system that was built by white privileged men who fit the sport mentality and that win at all cost culture. And that's the problem. And it's okay. That culture, I'm not trying to say that culture is bad, but it is part of a culture. And when that culture says, well, why we need to be more diverse and inclusive, well, they don't know how, because they only know there. And then they wonder why that's not happening. And so to have that, we need to change the system. And that's, again, where, how do we invite people authentically? How do we welcome and include them so that it's not about fitting in, but that they get to bring what their needs are, that their mental and physical and social well-being, that they get to thrive and show their authentic selves, so that someone doesn't come to them and say, you're being too French.
Exactly. This is what we were talking about. Like, if you go to companies, they want people with different diverse backgrounds so that they could bring different ideas on the plate. They could bring different techniques from their own experiences to work on. But once they go and join the company, like, they are being recruited because they are diverse. But once they go and join the company, the people on the top table, they want the new recruits to change and adapt their own culture and policy. So what's the whole purpose of having that diversity and inclusion if you have to change people the way you are? So how are you going to change about it? And Mark, saying that you have identified what the problem is. We have identified how the ideal solutions should look like. But how to mend that path, how to bridge that path? Is that what Bonobo is doing at the moment? Is that your vision, to mend that path from the problem to the vision state?
Yeah, and that's the most purposeful and passionate part, and it's also the most challenging part, because to do that, it is about changing the system. And that's also why I like the work of belonging, is that I'm not here to change Shivi and say, we're going to change you to fit the system. You do not need the makeover. The system, the organization needs the makeover. And so it's putting that responsibility and accountability on those organizations. So one of the challenges is, first, for those organizations to identify that they have a problem and that they need help. That's always the first problem and the part. And the other one is, they also, as much as you want to be altruistic and you want inclusion, you also need to identify why this is important. And so oftentimes with many places, whether it's workplace, sport and recreation, or other organizations, they want to recruit more people and they want to retain those people. And so if they really want to recruit and retain more people, then what I'm selling and what I'm saying is that belonging is the key. When someone feels like they belong, they are going to want to show up. So you're going to recruit more people, and they're going to want to stay, because the experience, whatever that is a wonderful. They feel like they belong. And that's the challenge, is selling that, because in the end, the people, well, what about, it costs money and I need to make revenue, and, but all of that, the more people you have and the more they stay, most likely The more revenue you're going to generate, the more opportunities you're going to have. And that's the challenge. And so, the whole framework that I work with organizations with is this idea, it's like a party. So if you picture a party and I say, Shivi, I'm having a party. If you don't know me, what are you going to say? You're going to go, okay, where is it? When is it? What's going to happen? You want to know all this information. If you know me already, you go, party at Marc's house. Great. That's all I need to know. But if you don't, and so many of these organizations don't have connections to these people, they say, well, it's at my house. It's at 10 o'clock and it goes till 12. They give you the base information. Again, that invitation isn't maybe enough for most people. So it kind of comes back to that HR job posting. You want to put all that information, and not only information, but feeling as to why you want to come to my party. So you say, and whatever, I can say, this is the type of music we're going to have. We're going to have food. We're going to have games. We're going to do all this stuff that interests you. And so now you, as the participant, you've been invited in a way that's meaningful. Go, yes, I'm going to show up. And that's just step one. The next step is you show up. How are you welcome to that experience? If you show up to the party and you knock on the door and no one answers it, or there's lots of music you hear, and you're walking around, there's no signs, no nothing. Maybe you push open the door and you look around and there's a group of people in suits having drinks, but then there's another group in track suits playing a game, and it's all this craziness going around, and you don't see me, the person who invited you. You're going to walk around and think, am I in the right place? Is this, I'm not sure. And you start asking questions, and that I feel that we do in most of the things we do in society. When we hire new people, when you try to play sport and rec, when you join a new community group, how could that be different if all of a sudden you knock on the door and I'm there? And I say, Shivi, wonderful to see you. I'm so glad you came. Okay, let me take your coat. Here's what's happening tonight. Have you eaten? Because we have some food here, and we have all the types of food that you like. And here's Shivi, come meet these people. And now that welcoming is much different, and you as a party goer and as a guest feel comfortable. You feel a little bit more accepted. Your stress is going down because you know what's happening. Wonderful, right? And again, that's kind of what we're not doing and I'll use sport and rec, where we hope that the participant joins up. And think about it. I don't know if you've been to a gym or a fitness center, and you show up and you go, yeah, membership. Okay, thank you. And then you're kind of, okay, can I go swimming? Like what can, we don't help navigate that. And then the included is, now you're at the party, you've met some people, you know all the activities, but say you try to go get something to eat and all the food's taken away from you. And then someone's playing a party game and they say, oh, no, sorry, there's no more room here at this game. Or you say, oh, here's some great music and I'm going to go dance. And they say, no, please, no dancing. You're not going to feel like you belong at this party. You're going to stand in the corner for an hour or two, wait, and then decide, okay, I think I'm going to leave. And that's what happens so often in workplaces and sport and rec. We invite them. They may even be welcomed, but we don't include them into the experience. And so we often see, especially in sport and rec, this revolving door. People try to get fit. They go to the fitness center and they leave. And so that's where I use the framework to help organizations to say, here's how you're going to retain and recruit all these individuals. And here's how you're going to make that experience so wonderful because they feel like they belong. And the challenge is that if you belong, if you already feel like you belong at your work or in your community, you don't remember what it's like when you didn't belong. And so you assume that everyone else feels the same way as you do. Of course, everyone's welcome. Everyone's going to have fun. I'm having fun, but that's not the case. And then when you take in more diversity of like someone new to a country, oh my goodness, now you've added, just think of someone who's grown up in the culture and don't feel like they belong. Now you add different languages and different backgrounds and different understandings of rules and policies and it just becomes overwhelming. And so you wonder why, you have new Canadians or people from a different background or gender identity not feel like they belong because they're trying to navigate a social concept that's already challenging and then add more of those things that make them feel different, that they don't feel like they belong.
Yeah, true. And Wow, that's so powerful, and that's what makes one company's different from another in terms of why people don't leave one company over other. Because I remember when I used to sit for the exit interviews, I used to see the results, which was pretty alarming. Like, people don't leave for salary, people don't leave for designations, people don't leave for increments, but major of them leave because if they had a bad boss, if they didn't had a great interpersonal relationships, or they didn't had a good work life balance, like all the culture pieces. That's the reason why people leave more than they leave for any of their monetary values attached to it. And I feel like when we go for the interview, when any candidate goes for the interview, it's not just the company who's interviewing the candidate, but it's also the vice versa. It's about the candidate who is interviewing the company. And Mark, what you are trying to achieve is amazing. But I wonder, like, when you go to your clients, to the organizations, and try to show them the whole big picture, what are the important challenges that you feel? What are the main kind of a setback feelings that you have, that you normally see when you go out and you try to convince them what's happening around it? Because at one point I understand that most of the people would say yes, but the whole problem would be the implementation and making that flow go. So how do you do that?
So I think one of the major pieces is that realization eventually needs to come from them. I can sit out and point things, but unless they realize it. So part of my role is to not just say, well, this should be different, that should be different. It's facilitating their experience and asking them. So if they're saying, well, we want to be more diverse, well, what does that mean to them? So let's talk about that first and let's see. And they could say, we want more people of color, more people with disabilities, whatever, more parents, more children, whatever that group is, that needs to come first, so that they know what they're trying to achieve. Because the great part of the belonging framework, it works anywhere. But because it works anywhere, you need to, it won't work unless you are identified on who it is. So once you have your target population, and say it could be, okay, I'll use sport as an example. There's a drive to get more girls active in sport. So when I talk to an organization that says we want to get more girls into sport, the first thing I ask them then is saying, how are you, again, inviting girls to come and be excited about your opportunity? And they'll say, well, we said, girls, come and play basketball. And that's it, right? Well, it's in the recreation guidebook or in the community book, or it's on our website. But that doesn't express a feeling in any way. That doesn't, talk to why a young girl may want to play basketball. And also, what do they want to get from that experience? Do they want skill development? Do they want to play with their friends? They just want something to do? Do they want to get fit? What are their motivations? And so the first part is really finding the messaging that works for that target population. And that's the hard part with HR. When you think about when you put a job posting out there, in your head, you have the ideal candidate, don't you? Right? You say like, oh, yeah, I want to be this. And then what does the job posting? It says nothing about who that person is or how they feel. It says, is responsible for payroll, is, good communicator. It's just fluff. But when I want a values-driven HR person who understands the importance of people over systems, and now you start telling a story about who that person is, so that the candidates that are applying are very much like the ones you have in your mind, regardless of color, shape, size, identity, etc., all that. And so that's part of that invitation, is how are we...
What you're saying is that when talking about recruitment, like when you said that we always have a candidate in mind, I believe that recruitment and dating is somewhat very similar. Like with dating, we always have this person in mind that who we want to date, and same is with the recruitment. We always have this person in mind that who do we want, but the job description is very broad. Is very broad. It's descriptive, but it's very broad, and that doesn't help in filtering. You're right about that.
And then sometimes on the flip side, we'll use the invitation where it doesn't elicit what you want. So I think of every time I look at come play basketball, right? It's saying we're looking for people to come play basketball. It is always a strong, muscular, tall person doing an action shot. And I see that. I'm older now. I'm stocky. I'm short. And I see that and going, is that the type of player that's playing? Because I'm not playing against them. And so if you look at a lot of fitness, sport, and rec imagery, it is all fit individuals, handsome, attractive, pretty, strong, built bodies. This is what we're using to invite people who usually don't feel that way about themselves. I go to work out, so maybe I might look 10% like that, but that's not who it is. And so again, sometimes we put the wrong imagery, even in a job description. We often put qualifications that we don't need or care about because it doesn't really help the job, but we put them in there. And so how does that scare away clients that would, or candidates that would fit our ideal? And so think about that when it comes to color and race and gender identity. We put a lot of language in there that might make them feel like I don't belong here. And we do it unintentionally, or sometimes we do it intentionally. But that invitation has to be so authentic. And even when we talk about diversity in job descriptions, what do we write? We encourage all culture. It's a statement that everyone writes now because I think it's part of the law, but it's not part of an invitation. Now it's meaningless. It doesn't tell me how inclusive or how receptive that organization is for me to show up in whatever identity I have and feel like I'm going to be accepted and appreciated, valued, and I think even more celebrated. That my difference is going to be celebrated, not looked at as something I need to try to fit in.
Right. And since Mark, we both are in Calgary right now, so it's interesting for me to understand the diversity and inclusion as being a part of the Calgary active community. So what do you think? What do you think about the whole perspective about diversity and inclusion? Like how included it is in the Calgary's active community, and where do you see the future lies? Because you have been the director at one of the cultural community at Genesis. So what have you seen? What has been from your experience?
Mm-hmm. I think the Genesis Center is a great example of the community being involved in that experience. The community wasn't asked to fit in. The community was asked to build that community. So there were some intentionalities behind building the center, the programming, and the opportunities, the community was asked to be involved in that. And so they were able to create something unique and different that serves the needs of the people in that community. That model is something that's so important in future development. And I hope that the communities across Canada can learn. And it's not like that. For example, that culture is very South Asian. We have people from India, Pakistan. We have from the Philippines. There's Muslim and Sikh, very diverse. But they were part of creating that experience, and that is critical. And I think what's happened in a lot of areas is we build the center, and we try to program it for the community rather than bringing the community in and then building the center because they're going to talk about what they need. And so, I think there's some, first, Calgary is a wonderful active city. It's one of the best in the country. A part of it is location with the outdoors and the mountains and the breadth of activity.
It's my favorite city. It's my favorite.
It's beautiful.
I just love mountains.
And there's so much activity. But we also need to we have the space, we have the desire, and there's a lot of people in Calgary who are working towards making a more inclusive, diverse, equitable, active. There's an active city collective, which I'm a part of, and they're just, it's a wonderful group. But to be more diverse and inclusive, we need to be intentional about what we do. So we can talk about the mountains and we can talk about more bike paths and more opportunities, but then we need to look at the reality of who are those bike paths being created for. Again, sometimes I ask and wonder, is it more white, straight, privileged men making those decisions? And I think as we get more women involved, that's great. But again, we need to start asking ourselves, who is not being included? Who is not a part of co-creating this experience for all Calgarians, that they all have an authentic voice? And I think that's the challenge moving forward, is ensuring that we're hearing those voices, that again, they feel like they belong in the system that is being created. Not that we create a system and try to fit them in, but as we're creating this active economy and really making Calgary the most active city in the world, we need to make sure that we're bringing in those voices, that they're creating that table we talked about earlier, that they are having a space, an opportunity, because if we don't, then we're going to lose big time on that idea of everyone is welcome, invited, and included, and people will feel like they don't belong here, because there are some challenges. Going to the mountains is expensive. You need a car. Not everyone has a car. You know, you need to know that area. And so how I feel really the work is to, how do we facilitate that experience for our community? How do we make sure that we are that person at the party, helping them through and organizing themselves, making sure that they're a part of things, making sure that the invitation is meaningful to them. And that's hard, because when we talk about diversity, it's everything. It's age and gender identity and race, culture, background. I don't even, there's no traditional Canadian culture. It just doesn't exist. So it's not like we can just say, well, once we have to be flexible and do things differently to make sure that everyone's included in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you say is so true, because when I moved to Calgary, I was thinking it's so beautiful, so diverse, so active, with so much of natural beauty around. But still, Calgary is not the sports capital of Canada. It's still going to be there. People are amazing, no doubt. So because you are so involved in the sports community, so what do you think is something that is lacking, or something that we Calgarians can improve on to make it actually the sports capital of Canada?
Mm-hmm. I think it really comes back to helping people belong, make them feel like they belong in sport. And to do that, you need to invite them in an authentic way. You need to welcome them to the experience, help facilitate. And I think it's really that facilitation. We put so much responsibility on the individual participant to figure it out. So Shivi, when you came here and you see the mountains, what do you think? I know when I'm from Ontario originally. I came here and going, wow, those mountains are great. I don't know where to go. Where can I go in the mountains to hike or walk? Where are the nice lakes? I can look on a map. But when you start driving to the mountains, what do you see? Cars parked on the side of the road. You're going, is that where I'm supposed to stop? I don't know. So the first thing we did was got invited by a family that knew Calgary, and they said to us, hey, we'd love to bring you to the mountains. Oh, we'd love to go. We just didn't know how to do it. They go, well, come with us. We'll follow you. We'll show you where the hiking trails are. That's that facilitation. But if we never got that invitation, I don't know, we may never have seen the mountains in a really wonderful way.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's like that in anything, whether it's a book circle or a knitting club or trying curling or whatever it is within our communities in sport and rec, and even at work. If we're not helped through that process, then we blame the participant. It's like blaming the victim. Well, it's your fault you haven't seen the mountains. It's so beautiful. You need to get out there. Yeah. So I think that's really what we need to work on is, how do we intentionally facilitate that experience for them? How do we alleviate that stress that I'm not sure about this? And I think, how do we create that feeling that someone goes, I really want to be a part of this? So I asked you about basketball the other day, or earlier on in the conversation. So you said, no, I've never played. Okay, so if I said, Shivi, come with me to play basketball, you might go, oh, no, right? I'm not doing that. I'm not.
But if you invite me for swim, I would love to go.
Right. But you're saying that, right? So, but I feel that if you trusted me and we connected and you felt like, together we belong because there was a friendship and a connection, I could invite you to play basketball and we could play. And you may enjoy it, you may not, right. But I bet you would have fun and you connected socially, because the outcome of you and me playing basketball isn't winning. It is. Right? We're not, I'm going to beat you. It's about, come and have fun. And so when I say those things, you're going to go, okay, and I can convince you to come. And maybe you find a love for basketball. Maybe you go, I didn't know how fun this was. And maybe not. And like swimming, you could do this. Mark, why don't you come swimming? Why don't you play tennis? We need to work on that invitation and really ask people to become part of it and think about what that goal is. So when we talk about being active, for the importance of it is people that are active are more mentally healthy. They're more socially healthy. They're physically healthy. I mean, it's proven. There's, you can pull all the research that says when you move your body regularly, right? Not only all the chemical and biological, you feel better, you act better, you're ready to use your brain, you're more connected to people. That should be the outcome. And we failed as a society to talk about that outcome and talk about that social wellness. What we talk about is competition. What we talk about is that elite skill. And that needs to be a different conversation, I feel. And that's really
right.
Go and hike the mountains. You know what else is active? Gardening, going for a walk, a bike ride, right? Like all of these things are what we do. But again, no one's invited me to garden. No one's invited me to, and when we do that more and bring people in, that's when the communities flourish and we feel vibrant. And really that's what the Active City coalition is looking to do, is to create that vibrancy and welcome. And so that's the work we need to do. We need to help people feel like they belong in that active economy, that they are a part of this wherever they feel comfortable.
Right. And saying that, like, if the weather is very unpredictable in Calgary, but we are blessed to have like amazing winter sports and summer sports that we can, if we want, we can do that. Even we can have an indoor sports too, which is like really great. And something I know about you, Mark, is you love playing with your kids. So when I talk about that, is it something as a part of you enjoy doing it, or is it something that you want to build on? You want your kids to build on something so that they can feel included, they can feel belong, they can feel that they have this diverse background altogether. What is that fun factor for you to do it?
Yeah, what's funny, so I've been in sport and rec pretty much my whole career, and I have not put my daughters in organized sport. And people go, what? You haven't? And I said, well, they haven't really asked. And they've experienced basketball and soccer and other sports, and we've played, but that's not where they're interested. They've done dance, they've done parkour, they've done circus aerials, because they just like to move their bodies. They play at the playground. Every day I pick up my daughter from school, and every day it could be cold, it could be hot. She wants to stay and play on the playground. And she's moving her body, and she's got her strong muscles and learning these things. But we're so focused on that traditional sport. So for me, I don't push them into anything. I just want them to move their bodies and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
I recently learned my 12-year-old daughter, who I didn't know, has a wonderful football arm, meaning she can throw a football perfectly with a spiral. I never knew. We went out and said, you want to play? You want to throw a ball around?
Wow.
Yep. And she had never done it before. And just, wow, like, where did you get that? And we started talking about that. And it's like, yeah, okay, she throws, but she doesn't really like kicking a ball. And so there's physical literacy so kids know how to play. We program our children into activities instead of just letting them have fun and play and explore. And that's where I have fun. I don't coach my girls in anything. We play. We just play all the time, and it's fun. I don't like, well, I got to go practice with my daughters now. I mean, and that's okay. That's there's some people that are passionate about that. So I don't want to knock that. But for me and for the relationship with my girls, it's about playing together. And so we go out and we have fun, and they're developing skills. Yeah. We play this game called combat basketball, where we put them the little like play net and this round ball, and they have to team up against me. The more they work together, the weaker I get, I say. Yeah. And so they start trying to, and then I was like, and they're fighting and they're wrestling, where they still want to wrestle, and because they like to move their bodies and that's often said, well, that's a traditional boys thing. No, girls and boys are different.
Yeah.
And so for me, that play is so important. It's just to play with them, and that's what where I feel like I belong is with my children, because we have fun together. I don't feel, and they're not my best friend. They're not, they don't feel that need, but we have a strong relationship because we play and we love playing. And so for me, it's not, I have to do this with my kids. It's about, I want to do this with my kids because
you enjoy it, right?
But I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun.
Yeah. At one point, it's important for the child development, and at some point, like, you are just having fun. It doesn't feel like you are especially taking out the time of your day to do this kind of a task, but it is just inbuilt and you just enjoy doing it. And children could feel that. Children could feel that, how important it is to include that into your habit. And you do it for 21 days and just becomes your habit. That's just
yeah. And an example is my daughter tried out for the basketball team at school. She's in grade 6. The school team is grade 6, 7, and 8. So she's trying out with girls that are older and taller and that. And she wanted to try out. She didn't make she didn't make the team. And you know what happened? She came home and said, I don't think I like basketball. And that's because the system failed her. Because I get that she may not be competitive enough for that school team, but there was no other opportunity that the school was providing to let the girls who didn't make the team to play and learn and grow and have fun with each other. And so she can come home and play with me. It's not the same as playing with your friends in a different environment. And so that's the challenge that I'm trying to fight for the system, is to say, what would it look like if we also provided an opportunity for those girls that didn't make this? So by not making the team, she felt like she didn't belong. She wasn't included. She wasn't welcomed because she wasn't good enough, right? And so then we have, and then we say, well, girls are dropping out of sport. And I say, well, yes, but they're dropping out because we only have one small system that they can fit in, where it's competition and skill. Where is the opportunity for them to just play? And that's what I want. I want to work with, community centers and schools and organizations to say there's more than providing the traditional. How about we provide systems for those who just want to play, who want to build social connections, who want to build those leadership skills, even though they may not be good at the actual sport in a way that's recognized because of awards and trophies and championships.
Yeah, and it's so good to know, Mark, about the culture of Bonobo Consulting that you have rooted through and you are planting it. So I'm coming back to this entrepreneurial mindset conversation at the moment. So you are having a full-time job. You are also an entrepreneur right now. So who better than you? Because a part of our show important is to inspire the entrepreneurs who are willing to start their own venture, who is willing to embark the journey that you have done before. So what is your message to them out there, like people who are transitioning either from job to entrepreneurship or even starting a new venture as a hobby that they want to do it? What is your message out there to them?
Purpose. Find your purpose. Find why you want to do what you're planning to do. When I started this journey, it was pre-COVID. So I was, encouraged by many others, and I felt the passion. And the more I talked about it with others, the more excited I got. And that meant I was doing something right. If I felt like, well, this is a place to make money and it's going to be my career, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm still learning and growing and developing. And so I really believe that purpose and that passion is important, because when I secured my full-time role, it was no longer a decision of saying, ooh, do I take the full-time role or do I continue on with my business? And for me, it was about, well, my business may not be as broad or as big as the vision I had, but I can still do so with purpose. So what actually it gave me was, with the full-time role, I'm dedicated and it's purposeful too, and I love it, but I still can do the side things. And it's almost like I get to pick and choose what is more purposeful and meaningful and exciting for me, rather than worrying about, am I going to get paid and how much is this going to cost and how much do I have to charge? Those are the hard parts. Now, of course, being an entrepreneur, those are important things, but those are hard to do if you don't have the purpose and the passion. So really think, when you're starting a business, why? Why are you doing this? And I think before I actually fell upon doing this, I had some great advice. Hafiz is someone who has been a guest on your show that gave me some advice saying, Mark, you look like you're really passionate and excited about this. You should do it. And it made me reflect saying, I am. But if I was doing it because I thought I was just going to make money, well, again, I've had some contracts and some really good opportunities, but you always have to work for that next opportunity. And if you don't have the passion and the purpose, finding that next opportunity becomes very draining and very stressful, and it's hard. When you have that passion and purpose, all the conversations you have with everyone about it just keeps building your passion and your purpose, and then the good things start to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something, Mark, most people don't know about you, is that in the past, like, you have been asked to go by 4 different companies, and it was not because of the cause, it was because the people at the top table, the leaders, didn't feel that you were included in that. So what do you think is most important for the job seekers out there? Because we have seen much of the job losses during COVID than ever before in the history. So what do you think is really important for the job seekers, either if they have been asked to go, either they have been COVID affected, or if they are now transitioning their career, because we are seeing that oil and gas is draining out. So what is your message out there to the people who are looking for the job? And in fact, who better than you to give them the advice?
And I think it's the same as being an entrepreneur. It's finding your purpose. What is going to make you excited about going to work? It may not be all the duties. It may not be all the, I don't like this part, and that's okay. But what is it? Is it the people you serve? Is it the organization? Is it the purpose of their work? And I think you can find that anywhere, but you have to look, and you have to be intentional about looking for that. And I think you want to feel like you belong. In the end, you want to work for an organization where you feel like you're valued, that you're celebrated, that the ideas, your experience, your lived experience, your skills, that they're all going to be asked of and be shown. No one goes to work saying, oh, I'm very good at this, but don't ask me to do that. I don't want to do that. Yeah. You want to do those things. So, and it's hard because you're also saying, well, I need a job, I need money, I need to live. I mean, these are important things too. But, if you always have that purpose in mind, then you're always looking for that next opportunity that will provide that purpose. And hopefully you find it. And if not, well, relish the experience that you got to help serve your purpose in the future.
Yeah, purpose, like knowing why you are doing what you're doing, is the foundation of building anything in the life, whether it is your relationship, whether it is your job, whether it is a company, whether it is anything. That's finding the purpose is the key, and you just nailed it, Mark. So Mark, you are doing amazing with Bonobo Consulting, the purpose that you have found it. So what is the impact, what is the mark that you wanna leave behind, you wanna create in the community with what you are doing?
It comes back to, the point guard, the idea that I want to help those organize, not me. I'm not going to create the change. I'm not the one who's going to score the basket. Those organizations are. And so, leaving the mark is helping those organizations create these communities where people feel like they belong. That's really, I think, where the magic happens, and what I want to do. It's not going to be what I do for you, Shivi. It's going to be what the community does for you, what those organizations do to help you feel like you belong, whether that's in Calgary, anywhere in the world. That's really what I want. I want to empower and educate and inform those organizations, the power they have in building belonging and fostering belonging and building the community. That's the mark I want to leave. So I can look at those organizations and feel, not that I did it, that I helped them along to achieve their, opportunity, their success through belonging.
Right. So Mark, you're doing amazing for the community. What you have done is just unparalleled. Whatever we can do for you, we would be grateful. So anything that you wanna ask, anything that we can help you, we can support you would be. So what is something that you want communities to support you to reach, to help you reach closer to the goal? What would be your ask? Because we would love to help you, or we would be a part of your mission and vision, what you're doing, because it's so encouraging.
I appreciate that so much. And I think for me, it is about the power of collaboration. And for me, the ask would be, if you are interested in talking about belonging, whatever that leads to, it doesn't need to lead to work or a contract, but if we can have conversations and understand how we can keep that whole vision of belonging moving, that's what I'm all about. So it's about reaching out and saying, hey, let's chat. If you know organizations that are looking, how do I recruit and retain more individuals? That's what essentially I'm doing, and I want to do that and work with this. And I think the other big ask is that I'm not the only one who does this or is a part of this. I really don't care who does it. It's when you're seeking out that idea of, I need some support and help, that you can look out to your community and say, hey, I know Shivi can help me in here, or here's someone who knows. And I think one of the things in my role as a consultant is not to only be the doer or to help organizations, but to help other organizations that have the resources and connect them to clients. So I might work with an organization that wants to do more belonging in sport, but then they talk about accessibility and how do we make our facility more accessible for people in wheelchairs. That's not my expertise. I know a little bit, but there's wonderful organizations and nonprofits and other consultants that can do that work and can do it more meaningful and authentic. So it's connecting them and saying, I'm not the right person, but here's someone you should. Because in the end, it's not about how many contracts I work with, or it's about that change and that systemic change. And really that's the ask, is that we all work together, we collaborate to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Collaboration is the key to bring the business together and to grow through it. And I completely believe in collaboration, totally. So Marc, tell us where we could connect with you if you want to collaborate with you, and how could we reach you?
So one way is through my website. It's bonobo-consulting.com. I do have an ability for people to sign up on a newsletter, but you can also just contact me directly. I'm on LinkedIn. Search up my name, Marc, M-A-R-C, Itturiaga. The information I'm sure will be up. But I mean, we connected on LinkedIn, and I love that. Like, I love getting a message saying, I just want to chat, and that's exciting. I am on Twitter. I use Twitter more than anything else. And I also use my voice on Twitter to share so many other wonderful things happening. It's not about me. In fact, most of my Twitter posts are not about what I'm doing. It's about what other organizations are doing. So that's another great way to help the community and collaborate. But I'm always welcome for a message, an email that just says, I'd love to chat. And I'm very open to that.
Yes, and this is something I want to share here is, it was just one text on LinkedIn, and we connected like we know each other for like ages. So this is a quality with you, Marc, that you make people feel connected. You make people feel like they are included. So my message out there is, if my audience who are listening to this show, and if you want to chat about belonging, don't look any further. Marc is the guy for you, and I can vouch on him because me and Marc, we just connected for the first time, and we are here today chatting. So he has this magic of doing things on people. So if you want to experience this magic, please go ahead and speak to Marc about it.
Thank you so much for that.
Thank you so much, Marc, for being the guest on our show today. Is there anything that you want to share before we close this interview for today?
Again, first of all, thank you for inviting me. You've made me feel like I belong. And that's the magic of belonging for me. You invited me, you welcomed me into this space, and you included me in the conversation. You made me feel important. You made me feel like I had something to share. And so, you talk about the magic I might have with building connections. You also have that magic, right? You made me feel like I belong.
Marc,
very important.
Thank you so much, Marc. We had fun having you, Marc, today on the show. So thank you so much, Marc, for being on the show today. And we will really look forward in supporting you with all the collaboration that we could. So thank you so much for being on the show, Marc, today.
Thank you very much.
Hey everyone, that was Marc Itturiaga on the Startup Impact Show, sharing his wisdom on inclusiveness, belonging, and diversity. So Please do not shy away in being a part of our inclusive community of the Startup Impact Show. If you are a job seeker or an aspiring entrepreneur, we would love to help you and inspire you by sharing this wisdom. So please like our channel, subscribe our channel, like our videos, and we would love to collaborate with you. Till then, stay safe and be awesome. Thank you. See you next time.